sir.
Yes, sir. Affirmative. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Reporting.
Affirmative.
Reporting.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Comrade. Affirmative. Yes, sir.
Acknowledge. Acknowledge. Affirmative.
Reporting.
Acknowledge.
Yes, sir. Waiting order.
Reporting.
Acknowledge.
Yes, sir.
Affirmative.
Reporting.
Acknowledge.
Yes, sir. Affirmative.
Yes, sir.
Acknowledge. Acknowledge.
Comrade.
Affirmative. Acknowledge. Affirmative.
Yes, sir.
Affirmative.
Waiting order. Yes, sir. Affirmative.
Reporting.
Acknowledge. Affirmative. Acknowledge. Acknowledge. Affirmative. Affirmative. Acknowledge. Affirmative. Acknowledge. Acknowledge.
Comrade.
Acknowledge.
Yes, sir.
Acknowledge.
Yes, sir.
Affirmative.
Comrade.
Affirmative.
Yes, sir.
Acknowledge.
Yes, sir. Affirmative. Yes, sir.
Reporting.
Acknowledge.
Reporting.
Acknowledge.
Yes, sir.
Reporting. Reporting.
Yes, sir. Acknowledge.
Waiting for,
Acknowledge.
waiting for. Yes, sir.
Acknowledge. Affirmative. Acknowledge. Acknowledge. Affirmative. Affirmative. Acknowledge. Affirmative. Acknowledge.
Yes, sir. Comrade.
Affirmative.
Yes, sir.
Affirmative.
Waiting for.
Acknowledge.
Comrade. Acknowledge. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Acknowledge. Acknowledge.
Waiting order.
Affirmative.
Waiting order. Comrade. Acknowledge. Affirmative.
Yes, sir.
Acknowledge. Affirmative. Affirmative. Acknowledge.
Yes, sir.
Acknowledge. Yes, sir. Affirmative. Yes, sir.
Acknowledge.
Yes, sir.
Acknowledge.
Comrade.
Affirmative. Affirmative. Acknowledge.
Yes, sir. Waiting order. Yes, sir.
Affirmative.
Comrade. Yes, sir.
Affirmative. Affirmative. Acknowledge. Acknowledge. Acknowledge.
Waiting order.
Affirmative.
Yes, sir.
Acknowledge.
Yes, sir. Waiting order.
Affirmative.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Comrade. Waiting order.
Yes, sir. Affirmative.
Yes, sir. Affirmative. Yes, sir. Affirmative.
Awaiting affirmative.
Waiting order. Yes, sir. Comrade.
Acknowledge.
Yes, sir.
Acknowledge. Affirmative. Acknowledge. Affirmative. Affirmative. Affirmative.
Reporting. Reporting.
Comrade.
Acknowledge.
Reporting.
Yes, sir.
Affirmative.
Comrade.
Reporting.
Acknowledge. Acknowledge.
Comrade.
Acknowledge. Awaiting affirmative. Affirmative. Acknowledge. Affirmative. Acknowledge. Yes, sir.
Vehicle report.
Acknowledge.
Waiting order.
Acknowledge.
Yes, sir.
Acknowledge. Acknowledge.
Comrade.
Affirmative.
Yes, sir.
Affirmative.
Reporting.
Comrade. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Affirmative.
Yes, sir.
Affirmative. Affirmative.
Reporting.
Waiting affirmative. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Acknowledge. Comrade. Comrade.
Report. Affirmative. Acknowledge. Affirmative. Acknowledge. 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 Reporting.
Acknowledge. Yes, sir. Waiting order. Yes, sir. Comrade.
Affirmative. Acknowledge. Affirmative. Acknowledge. Affirmative.
Comrade.
Reporting.
Acknowledge.
Awaiting acknowledge. Reporting. Acknowledge.
Reporting.
Acknowledge. Comrade. Affirmative.
Vehicle report. Acknowledge.
Yes, sir. Waiting order.
Reporting.
Comrade.
Reporting.
Acknowledge. Affirmative. Affirmative.
Waiting order.
Affirmative.
Comrade.
Mission saved.
Acknowledge.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Affirmative.
Yes, sir.
Acknowledge.
Yes, sir.
Affirmative.
Waiting order.
Acknowledge.
Waiting order. Yes, sir.
Acknowledge. Acknowledge.
Yes, sir.
Affirmative.
Comrade.
Acknowledge.
Yes, sir.
Acknowledge.
Reporting.
Waiting order. Comrade.
Acknowledge. Acknowledge.
Yes, sir.
Acknowledge. Acknowledge.
Comrade.
Acknowledge.
Waiting.
Acknowledge. Affirmative.
Comrade.
Acknowledge. Affirmative.
Comrade. Yes, sir.
Acknowledge. Acknowledge.
Yes, sir. Waiting order.
Acknowledge. 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 Affirmative. Acknowledge. Acknowledge. Affirmative. Affirmative.
Yes, sir.
Acknowledge.
Reporting.
Acknowledge. Affirmative.
Yes, sir.
Waiting order.
Yes, sir.
Acknowledge.
Yes,
Yes, sir.
Negative.
Yes, sir. Comrade. Yes, sir.
Acknowledged.
Waiting order.
Yes, sir.
Unit
Yes,
lost.
sir.
Acknowledged.
Yes, sir. Affirmative. Acknowledge. Yes, sir. Affirmative. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Affirmative.
Yes, sir. Affirmative.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Affirmative.
Yes, sir.
Acknowledged. Affirmative.
Yes, sir.
Acknowledged.
Yes, sir.
Affirmative.
Waiting order.
Affirmative.
Yes, sir.
Affirmative.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Waiting order.
Acknowledged.
No problem.
Affirmative.
Yes, sir. Waiting order.
Acknowledged.
Yes, sir.
Affirmative.
Yes, sir.
Acknowledged. Affirmative.
Yes,
Acknowledged.
sir. Yes, sir.
Awaiting
Yes,
orders.
sir. Affirmative. Reporting.
Acknowledged. Reporting.
Yes, sir.
Acknowledged.
Yes,
Affirmative.
yes, sir.
Acknowledged.
Yes, sir.
Affirmative.
Yes, sir. Waiting order. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Yes, sir.
Acknowledged.
Yes, sir.
Affirmative.
Waiting order.
Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Acknowledged.
Yes, sir.
Acknowledged.
Comrade. Waiting order.
Affirmative.
Yes, sir.
Acknowledged.
Yes, sir.
Acknowledged.
Yes, sir.
Acknowledged.
Reporting.
Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged.
Yes, sir.
Affirmative.
Yes, sir.
Acknowledged.
Reporting.
Acknowledged.
Reporting.
Affirmative.
Yes, sir.
Acknowledged.
Reporting. Yes, sir.
Acknowledged.
Yes, sir.
Affirmative.
Yes, sir.
Acknowledged.
Yes, sir.
Affirmative.
Yes, sir.
Affirmative.
Yes, sir.
Affirmative.
Waiting order. Comrade.
Acknowledged.
Waiting order.
Acknowledged.
Yes, sir. Yes, acknowledge. Yes, sir. Comrade. Acknowledge. Affirmative.
Vehicle report. Affirmative.
Reporting. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Waiting order.
Acknowledged.
Yes, sir.
Affirmative.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Affirmative.
Yes, sir.
Acknowledged.
Yes, sir.
Acknowledged.
Yes, sir. Comrade.
Affirmative.
Waiting order.
Affirmative. Awaiting. Acknowledged.
Yes, sir. Waiting order. Comrade.
Affirmative.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Waiting order. Comrade. Yes, yes, sir.
Affirmative.
Waiting order. Yes, sir. Acknowledged.
Mission saved.
Waiting order. Waiting order.
Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Acknowledged.
Comrade. Comrade.
Affirmative.
Yes, sir.
Acknowledged.
Waiting. Reporting.
Acknowledged.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Acknowledged.
Reporting.
Acknowledged.
Yes, sir.
Affirmative.
Yes, sir.
Affirmative.
Reporting.
Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative.
Reporting.
Affirmative. Affirmative.
Reporting.
Affirmative. Acknowledged.
Comrade.
Acknowledged.
Yes, sir.
Affirmative.
Comrade.
Acknowledged.
Yes, sir.
Affirmative.
Yes, sir.
Acknowledged.
Yes, sir.
Acknowledged. Affirmative.
Waiting order. Yes, sir.
Acknowledged.
Yes, sir.
Affirmative.
Yes, sir.
Affirmative.
Waiting order.
Affirmative. 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 Acknowledged. Affirmative. 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 Acknowledged. Affirmative. 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 Acknowledged. 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 Affirmative.
Yes, sir.
Acknowledged.
Waiting order.
Yes, sir. Acknowledged. Acknowledged.
Yes, sir.
Acknowledged. Yes, sir. Affirmative. Acknowledged.
Yes, sir.
Affirmative.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir. Affirmative. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative.
Yes, sir.
Acknowledged. Vehicle report.
Reporting.
Acknowledged.
Comrade.
Affirmative. Yes, sir. Affirmative.
Waiting order.
Acknowledged.
Reporting.
Acknowledged.
Reporting.
Affirmative.
Comrade.
Acknowledged.
Reporting.
Acknowledged.
Yes, sir. Affirmative. Yes, sir. Comrade.
Affirmative. Reporting.
Yes, sir. Waiting order.
Acknowledged.
Comrade.
Yes, sir.
Yes, yes, sir.
Acknowledged.
Waiting
Affirmative.
order.
Unit
Reporting.
lost.
Affirmative.
Yes.
Affirmative.
Mission saved.
Affirmative.
Yes, sir.
Affirmative.
Yes.
Affirmative.
Unit
Acknowledged.
lost.
Acknowledged.
Comrade.
Affirmative.
Yes, sir. Waiting order.
Affirmative. Acknowledged.
Yes, sir.
Affirmative. Affirmative.
Yes, sir.
Affirmative.
Yes, sir. Reporting. Reporting.
Acknowledged.
Comrade. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Acknowledged.
Reporting. Yes, sir. Waiting order. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Acknowledged.
Yes, sir.
Affirmative.
Reporting.
Acknowledged.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Comrade. Waiting order. Yes, sir.
Affirmative.
Yes, sir.
Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged.
Yes, sir.
Affirmative. Affirmative.
Comrade.
Acknowledged.
Yes, sir.
Affirmative. Affirmative. Affirmative.
Waiting order.
Acknowledged.
Reporting.
Acknowledged.
Waiting order.
Affirmative.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Affirmative.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Affirmative. Affirmative.
Comrade.
Acknowledged.
Yes, sir. Comrade.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Comrade. Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. 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 Acknowledged. Affirmative. Waiting order. Yes, sir.
Affirmative. Affirmative.
Yes, sir.
Affirmative.
Comrade. Yes, sir.
Affirmative.
Yes, sir.
Affirmative. Affirmative.
Yes, sir.
Affirmative. Affirmative.
Yes, sir.
Report acknowledged. Affirmative.
Reporting. Comrade.
Acknowledged.
Yes, sir.
Affirmative.
Yes, sir.
Acknowledged.
Comrade.
Acknowledged.
Yes, sir. Reporting.
Acknowledged.
Yes, sir. Acknowledged. Reporting.
Acknowledged.
Comrade.
Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Affirmative. Affirmative.
Yes, sir. Reporting.
Acknowledged.
Yes, sir.
Affirmative.
Yes, sir.
Affirmative.
Comrade.
Affirmative.
Waiting. Comrade.
Acknowledged.
Yes, sir. Comrade. Waiting order. Waiting order. Yes, sir.
Affirmative.
Comrade.
Acknowledged. Affirmative.
Comrade. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Affirmative. Waiting order. Waiting.
Acknowledged.
Yes, sir.
Affirmative.
Comrade.
Affirmative.
Comrade. Yes, sir.
Affirmative.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Acknowledged.
Reporting.
Acknowledged.
Waiting order. Comrade. Yes, sir.
Affirmative.
Waiting order.
Acknowledged.
Reporting.
Acknowledged.
Reporting.
Acknowledged.
Reporting. Reporting. Yes, sir.
Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Acknowledged.
Reporting. Yes, sir. Reporting.
Affirmative.
Comrade.
Affirmative. Affirmative.
Yes, sir.
Acknowledged.
Comrade.
Affirmative.
Comrade. Yes, sir.
Acknowledged.
Waiting order.
Affirmative.
Waiting order.
Acknowledged.
Reporting.
Acknowledged.
Yes, sir.
Affirmative.
Yes, waiting order.
Acknowledged. Acknowledged.
Reporting.
Acknowledged.
Reporting.
Affirmative.
Yes, sir.
Acknowledged.
Comrade.
Acknowledged. Affirmative.
Comrade.
Acknowledged.
Waiting order. Yes,
Affirmative.
sir. Yes, sir.
Acknowledged.
Yes, sir.
Acknowledged.
Reporting.
Affirmative.
Yes, sir.
Affirmative.
Comrade.
Acknowledged. Affirmative.
Reporting.
Acknowledged.
Reporting.
Acknowledged.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, yes, sir.
Affirmative.
Waiting. Waiting.
Acknowledged.
Yes.
Affirmative. Affirmative.
Yes, sir. Reporting. Reporting.
Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Acknowledged.
Yes, sir. Comrade. Reporting.
Acknowledged.
Reporting.
Affirmative.
Yes, sir.
Affirmative. Acknowledged.
Yes, sir.
Affirmative.
Waiting.
Affirmative.
Yes.
Affirmative.
Yes, sir.
Affirmative.
Yes, sir.
Affirmative.
Comrade.
Acknowledged.
Waiting.
Affirmative.
Yes, sir.
Acknowledged.
Waiting order.
Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Affirmative.
Waiting order.
Affirmative.
Yes, sir.
Affirmative.
Reporting. Reporting. Waiting. Yes, comrade.
Acknowledged.
Yes, sir.
Affirmative.
Reporting.
Affirmative.
Reporting.
Acknowledged.
Mission saved.
Reporting.
Affirmative.
Comrade.
Acknowledged.
Yes, sir. I'll get my ring. Reporting.
Affirmative.
Yes, sir.
Acknowledged. Affirmative.
Reporting. Reporting. Yes, sir. Waiting order. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Comrade. I'll get my ring. Yes, sir.
Acknowledged. Affirmative.
Yes, sir.
Affirmative.
Waiting order.
Acknowledged.
Waiting order.
Affirmative.
Yes, sir. Waiting order.
Acknowledged.
Reporting. Waiting order.
Affirmative.
Comrade. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Reporting.
Yes, sir. Affirmative. Acknowledged.
Yes, sir.
Reporting. Affirmative. Yes, sir. Affirmative.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Report acknowledged.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Acknowledged.
Reporting. Yes,
Affirmative.
sir.
Acknowledged. 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 Affirmative. 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 Acknowledged.
Yes, sir.
Affirmative.
Yes, sir.
Affirmative. Acknowledged. Acknowledged.
Yes, sir.
Acknowledged.
Waiting order. Yes, sir.
Affirmative.
Comrade.
Acknowledged.
Yes, sir.
Acknowledged.
Reporting.
Affirmative.
Waiting order. Yes,
Affirmative.
sir.
Acknowledged.
Yes, sir. Waiting order.
Acknowledged.
Yes, sir.
Acknowledged.
Comrade. Reporting. Waiting order. Reporting. Yes, sir. Reporting. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Affirmative.
Reporting.
Awaiting orders.
Affirmative.
Yes, sir.
Waiting order.
Yes, sir.
Acknowledged.
Awaiting orders.
Mission saved.
Yes, sir. Affirmative.
Waiting order. Acknowledged.
Awaiting affirmative.
Comrade. Yes, sir.
Awaiting.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Affirmative.
Waiting order. Waiting order. Yes, sir.
Affirmative. Acknowledged.
Yes.
Acknowledged.
Reporting.
Affirmative.
Comrade. Comrade,
Acknowledge.
reporting.
Acknowledge.
Reporting.
Acknowledge.
Yes, sir.
Acknowledge.
Reporting.
Affirmative.
Yes, sir.
Affirmative.
Waiting for
Affirmative.
reporting.
Acknowledge.
Yes, sir.
Affirmative.
Yes, sir.
Acknowledge. Affirmative. Affirmative. Acknowledge. Acknowledge. Affirmative. Affirmative.
Waiting orders.
Affirmative.
Comrade,
Acknowledge. Affirmative. Affirmative.
reporting.
Acknowledge.
Yes, sir.
Acknowledge. Affirmative.
Yes, sir.
Affirmative.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Affirmative.
Comrade.
Acknowledge.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Acknowledge. 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 Affirmative. Acknowledge.
Mission accomplished.